explained they serve as recruiting grounds for loyalists and venues for collecting funds under the guise of cultural celebration. Indoctrination extends to young people who are encouraged to join PFJ youth organizations. The effect is to sustain the regime's reach while stifling freedom of expression among exiled Eritreans. I have myself been attacked for supporting the Eritrean opposition. It was unpleasant, and the perpetrator was found guilty. I'm happy to tell you about it if you wish to, but believe you me, what was done to me was nothing by comparison to what people have suffered otherwise. And I would not wish to highlight what happened to me, because I think it was relatively insignificant. Let me just explain briefly what has happened in Britain, only because I was personally involved in this in some way, but also because this is the case I know best. The British government's response to Eritrean transnational repression has been weak and inconsistent. While the UK supported UN Security Council Resolution 2023 of 2011, which condemned Eritrea's use of the diaspora tax and demanded an end to coercive collection methods, enforcement has been lacking. In Parliament, Baroness Wasi stated that the UK, quote, has made clear that the use of coercion and other illicit means to collect taxes in the UK must cease, and urged Eritreans to report such cases to the police. Acting on this advice, members of the Eritrean community in London filed a formal criminal complaint in 2015 against the Eritrean ambassador, submitting receipts and recordings, including video recordings, as evidence that the tax was still being collected under threat. However, the Metropolitan Police declined to pursue prosecutions. Inspector Simon Fox explained in a letter that under English law, collecting taxes from citizens abroad is not itself illegal, and that the UN resolutions do not automatically create enforceable offences unless incorporated into domestic law. He concluded that, quote, no criminal offences have to take place under English law. The result left the Eritrean complainants feeling betrayed, having acted according to parliamentary assurances. They saw no action being taken and concluded the UK's promises were hollow. Confidence in British institutions were undermined, and no further complaints were made despite continuing coercion. So they had acted on the advice that Baroness Wasi had given in Parliament, taken to the police. They took it to the police and were told, so what? It stays there. Elsewhere in Europe, similar concerns have emerged. The Norwegian government commissioned an extensive report defining transnational oppression as violence, threats, harassment, infiltration, denial of consular services, and misuse of international frameworks to intimidate diasporic communities. The report found that Norway's response had failed to match the seriousness of the problem. The Netherlands also investigated the issue in 2016 and took steps to curb harassment of the Eritrean refugees, while the Norwegian government has failed to act on the Parliament's report, and we are still waiting to see what they will do about it. The most serious meanwhile, across Europe and the Middle East, festivals linked to the Eritrean regime became violent battlegrounds. In 2023, protests erupted in Gießen in Germany when police used batons and pepper spray after demonstrators denounced a propaganda event by the Eritrean government, and dozens of officers were injured and nearly 100 protesters were arrested. The most serious clashes occurred in Israel, where Eritrean government supporters and opponents fought near the Eritrean embassy in Tel Aviv. Police opened fire with live ammunition, injuring over 100 people. Prime Minister Netanyahu denounced the riots and called for the deportation of 1,000 regime supporters, arguing that anyone who backed the Eritrean government had no claim to refugee status, and in fact, at least one deportation of those kind of people has now In Sweden, as I'm sure you're aware, similar violence led authorities to propose moving Eritrean asylum seekers into separate reception centres to prevent further conflict. And governments across Europe are now reconsidering how to manage the growing tensions within the Eritrean communities and how to address foreign states' interference driving them. The resistance within the diaspora in Britain has been led by organisations like the Blue Revolution and the Brigade Muhammadu, which mobilised against the regime. Once loyal exiles are now openly rejecting attempts to extract money and to impose political control. In response, the Eritrean government has activated loyalist groups, some behaving like paramilitary units to confront protesters and enforce discipline. As I said, in recent months, those protests have subsided because I think the Blue Brigade and Brigade Muhammad began to see that actually it was beginning to backfire on their own community. But it was certainly a very serious matter, and I know for a fact that these took the invasion very seriously indeed. The erosion of diaspora loyalty represents a profound challenge to President Assad. His government's legitimacy and finances depend heavily on overseas Eritreans, but younger generations increasingly see the festivals and propaganda as manipulation rather than cultural pride. As one activist put it, we will dance to our own music, not the regime's. Let me conclude by making some recommendations which, of course, would have to be modified. These were designed for a British situation, and they would have to be modified for what you face in Sweden. If governments wish to protect Eritrean citizens and residents and prevent future street violence, it must adopt a coherent policy that recognizes and counters this threat. Firstly, there should be official recognition. Public acknowledgement that Eritrea engages in transnational jurisdiction and to declare such practices as unacceptable. That is the first step all governments, I would suggest, in democracy should take. Be open, be clear, and give it official representation and recognition. Secondly, community engagement. I think it is necessary to rebuild trust by consulting Eritrean community representatives, apologizing for earlier failures, and committing to act credible reports of intimidation and extortion. And those promises of action must not be left in the hands only of the community, they must be followed through. And that's why I believe that law enforcement coordination is required. Authorize a dedicated police unit in collaboration with the security services to investigate and prevent transnational repressive activity. Walid case in the Netherlands is an example of this taking place, where there's been huge efforts, 25,000 pages of evidence, now in an official court, in an official process. You will see where that goes. Fourthly, international cooperation. Governments should work with their allies in Europe and North America to share intelligence, harmonize policy, and curb the Eritrean government's operations across borders. And finally, there should be transparency and oversight. I would suggest that in Britain, what we require is an annual report to Parliament on the incidence of transnational repression affecting UK residents and measures taken in response. Of course, in Britain, this would not only involve the Australian community. You may be aware that the Chinese government does this a great deal to their own people, including pulling people into the embassy and beating them up on British soil, which of course in the case of an embassy is Chinese soil, Department embassy. Eritrea's reach into its diaspora is not unique, but few regimes have maintained such tight control for so long. For many exiles, the struggle against dictatorship will not end with their escape from Asmara. It continues in the streets of London, Stockholm, and Tel Aviv. Unless democratic governments confront this challenge directly, this is unlikely to intensify and continue. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cloud. Yeah, we will discuss later. Thank you very much to Mr. Cloud. Your recommendations are well regarded, well noted, and we hope the politicians also take these recommendations into account and come to a better solution. Thank you very much. So the next speaker will be our next speaker will be Mr. Yosef Ghazai. Please welcome Mr. Yosef Ghazai. Mr. Yosef Ghazai has come here all the way from Norway to share the experience of Norway, and we hope we get valuable information from Mr. Ghazai as well. Mr. Ghazai is an Eritrean community in Norway, and he has lived in Norway for over 45 years and is trained in petroleum engineering, and he has dedicated much of his life to the community advocacy. He has played a key role in exposing transnational repression targeting Eritreans in Norway and in raising this issue all the way to the Norwegian Parliament. So there is no better person than Mr. Ghazai to share us his experience, how the Norway Parliament come to their decision. Although we hear that they have not taken any action, still they have not taken any action. So it's just like, just doing research, finding out what are the causes, what are the consequences, but not deciding to take action is just doing nothing. So doing research, finding out the cause and the consequences doesn't help until it is taken into action. Thank you very much, Mr. Ghazai.
Thank you. I think you have to turn your head around. I think it will do. Can I hear so tomorrow? Okay. I would like to thank you for inviting us to Stockholm from Norway. I came all the way from Stavanger, and I would like to say thank you to Pippin Moge, who is not here with us, but Pippin very instrumental in doing or in trying to make the parliament, the politicians, and to many people who are in part of the problem as well. So, I mean, I'm not going to bother you with the why it matters. I mean, everybody knows why we are here, why we are talking about it. But my point of action will be to give you some background and to give you what experience and what challenges we have. In fact, we, as everybody knows, we have the same experience, I think, but the problem is probably what challenges. And I think that's what it lies, the challenge really we are facing, being Norwegian Eritreans or Swedish Eritreans, so what the challenge really is facing from our perspective. It all starts back in 2020, why it was important to speak about this topic, this subject, especially after the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. There was a lot of refugees in Norway, and journalists get interested in the topic and they try to speak about it, and there was coming. So it starts with 2% really, back in 2014 and 2016. It was a hot issue in Norway. The office where they were collecting money was in the middle, in the heart of Oslo, in Kalihar. They had an office and they were collecting money. Then the government get aware of that and they start to stop it. And now in Norway, in fact, they don't really collect money anymore. Then there was the irony in 2019. I mean, I don't understand why, whether it's foolishness or stupidity, I don't know, people who ask asylum were celebrating the main issue they got asylum for. So was celebrating Oslo on 25 years of Sawa was celebrating Oslo in front of the Norwegian government. By Yamane Manke was there to support. This was a big issue in Norway because most Eritreans get asylum because one of the main reasons they get asylum is because they want to suffer. And that was really an irony to celebrate Sawa in Norway. And this was really an eye-opener to the Norwegian government because it's not because it's also a threat to the Norwegian asylum system. Then this was an issue, as I said, it was an issue, the parliament was involved, and there was a special hearing, so a special hearing because of this issue. There was about 150 cases was pulled out to be investigated again. Unfortunately, this case somehow stopped because there was a lot of Ukrainian refugees in Norway. So the foreign ministry didn't have capacity to just close the case. But 150 of asylum seekers were seeing their case again and again to see whether they were falsely got asylum or not. There was about 5 or 10 people who were returned back to Italy, and they were taken away their asylum papers. Then, in 2020, the government received a report favoring control, which was followed again in 2023 by transnational repression. That was the first time we had a war in Norway. Then, as everybody knows, there was these violent clashes in Norway, 2023. And by spring 2024, Norwegian government adopted, at least they were told to do some action to fight the transitional repression. Until now, nothing happened. And we may ask why. That's the next step. Why didn't this one? As you see, this is exactly what it says on the report. Who is controlling? I mean, this was clear. Points out that the church, the community. Okay. So, and the next one was this. The next one was the transition report on 23 at the same time. Okay, anyhow, if the report concludes that transnational repression has the potential to become a serious social problem. Not only that, it says also representing threats to the Norwegian sovereignty, national security, and territorial integrity as well. And it also constitutes a human rights violation against individuals and diaspora communities. Then that's the challenge we have is the paradox of democracy. What do I mean by that? Because everyone can have free speech in Norway, he can assemble himself, he can organize. Which means the other side, they could do exactly the same what we do. They can organize, they can have their own opinion, they can have assemblies. But this is, as you know, like what's happening in the US, democracy can be misused. And exactly that's what's happening here. So how do we do that? How do we protect the rights of someone without repressing it? So that's a balance between having the right to have an organization, the right to have an assembly. But what makes it difficult for us Eritreans is, it's not like financial repression when you see China or Iran, they do it in a different way. They have their embassies, they have their styles. But when it comes to our case, Eritrea doesn't have in Norway, especially, they don't have any embassy. It's within us. So how do we get this information out to the Norwegian government? That's our challenge now. Every time we talk to the politicians, they say, this is the fight between two groups. Between those who support the regime and those who don't support the regime. But in no way we try to turn that all around. We are saying, no, it's not. It's not between two groups. It's between Norwegian Eritreans and a foreign state. So we are demanding our rights. As Norwegians, we have the right to be protected. So that's the challenge we have now. Because, as you know, our enemies are within the community, within the churches, within the organizations. So that's one of the challenges, to make this thing aware to the outside world, or to the Norwegians, to the politicians. So I think that's I'm sure the same problem we have here in Sweden as well. Because they say, if someone doesn't want to care about it, they say, oh, this is complex issue. This is something to do everything. Like in Norway, for example, there are about 40 churches, 40 plus churches. And there are 15 churches from the other side, or from our side. And in Norway, like, for example, churches get a lot of money from the government. They get like 1,500 per member. So there is a church in Stavanger who gets like 1.5 million a year from the government. And there is no audit, there is no check and balance. Every time they get the money, they don't really get any audits or any check. 2 years ago, there was this hearing when the government saying to put this democratic values into the church. But the whole Norwegian church says, no, you are not going to interfere into our church. So now we cannot say, okay, go and check this church or do this or do that, because they don't have any authority. Every time you go to the police, they say you have to. I mean, if something happens, you go to the police, they tell you don't have anything to work with, or you don't have any laws to enforce. So now the government is saying, for example, another thing also is the case the government plays is more difficult because, like, especially on the case in Norway, they say all those who are making this repression, they are not in Norway. They are in Eritrea. But that's what when you say from the Chinese or from the Iranian side, but from our perspective, all are in Norway, all the churches, the organizations, all are part of this repression. So that's our challenge in Norway. So that's what we think it is important to look at that. Like for example, this is an Norwegian mistake. It says here when they try to put this handling plan, the action plan, they say, especially in Norway, they say those who are doing this action, they are not in Norway. So it's very difficult to put any plan. So again, how do we change this attitude? So we have to work on that. For the first, this is not between two groups, it's between Norwegians and the foreign power. That's it. I think that's what I had really. And if you have any questions, so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gulay. Actually, it was really illuminating presentation, and I really appreciate Mr. Gulay or his group that they have identified the key issues. And once you identify the key issues, it becomes easier to work on it. And as we repeatedly say, political actions are required. Doing research is not enough. Lifting up issues is not enough until the political will and political decision is met. So our demand, like Norwegians, is that the Swedish politicians take this issue seriously and find solutions. So this is what we can say in relation to the presentation of Mr. Gazai. If there are any questions or discussions, we're going to raise it later on. Thank you very much.